many faces.
You sick for this one. Sick for this one. Sick for this one.
The thing about hip hop today is it's smart. It's insightful. The way that they can communicate a complex message in a very short space is remarkable. And a lot of these kids, they're not going to be reading the New York Times. That's not how they're getting their information.
My hip hop will rock and shock the nation. Hip hop culture is more than music.
Peace to you and speak the truth. Show 'em what peace can do in their reach for you.
My hip hop will rock and shock the nation. Rap is something you do. Hip hop is something you live.
So hip hop didn't invent anything, but hip hop reinvented everything.
This is Baby Girl Faces. And this episode is brought to you by
Yes, y'all. Peace and love to Man Many Faces. Welcome to Hip Hop Can Save America for December 23rd, 2024. In the midst of the holiday season, I don't mean to impose my Christmas beliefs on you if you're celebrating another holiday this season or no holiday at all. It's fine. You're welcome here. I just have all this stuff, and so I'm going to do it. But I appreciate you for coming through and rocking with us. This is the world's most enlightening hip-hop live stream show. Didn't know if you knew that. If you're a repeat visitor, you might have a clue. If you're new for the first time, like, who is this clown with the elf and the lights and the DJ Santa Claus? Well, I'm Manny Faces. I'm the guy that runs this show. I've been doing so for a couple of years. I'm not new to this. We're true to this, and we talk about the ways that hip-hop music and culture can help uplift humanity and improve society. Not just the entertainment stuff, not just the gossipy type stuff that you might see here, there, and in between. So we do this. We also give this kind of information out through a newsletter that goes out into your email inboxes for free. And we also have the podcast version of this show, which is sort of like the audio version. But this is the good stuff. This is where we got people like Andrew Wang in the chat contributing, Bob Knutson checking in, Miss Parker, one time for Miss Parker. You know what I mean? Like, people who are involved in hip hop or curious about hip hop or doing hip hop in ways that are not just being an artist. We love our artist friends. We have a lot of artists that come through here. We love our teaching artists. We love our people that are using hip hop as a way to reach and teach and influence the world in positive ways. A lot of people think that that doesn't happen or that it doesn't happen anymore. But we're here to tell you otherwise. And we do that every week here, Monday Night Live on the live stream. Of which you are now taking part. You might be watching us on a replay. Please join us live, Mondays, 9 p.m. And if you're watching us live here, like some of the folks I just mentioned, I appreciate y'all for being here. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and that's dope, because we're going to talk about some things tonight. I thought about this. To the end of the year, I'm not doing interviews as much. We're going to start up with interviews again in the beginning of the year. Most of the time, it's not just me babbling for a long period of time. I'm talking with brilliant people that are doing the aforementioned work, right? Using hip hop in ways that can uplift humanity, in ways that are inspirational, innovative, and often surprising, especially to folks who are outside of the culture and don't really realize that hip hop could be used in ways in like education, or science and technology, or health and wellness, or politics and social justice, or business and entrepreneurship, or self-help and spirituality and the fine arts. There's so many ways that hip-hop is actually being used, and not theoretically, like we talk about it like it can do these things. No, it is doing these things, and it's been doing these things. And somebody needs to tell you about it. So if you don't know, you will know. And if you already know, then we're just going to be here validating and amplifying and getting you hyped up about the work you do. So, Andrew's excited to discuss what faces hip hop has dealt with this year. I found this an interesting topic because I put this, you put this out at the end of the, I don't like doing end of the year stuff, top lists and all that. I've already told people, I've given y'all the best list of top rappers of all time, the only list that, matters. And you can check that on the on the newsletter feed. So I don't like doing that. Lists are subjective and they're fine, and you can find them. You're gonna find like top whatever songs of the year and things like that. But you know, I wanted to make a bigger point about what this year gave us, and was it a good year? Would Santa Claus, were he to exist for real, which of course he does, give hip hop a present this year, or would it just be a lump of coal? And so I wanted to know your thoughts. I put it out to like the general public, Facebook and some of the social media that are generally less tuned in than we are on this show, where we kind of know that hip hop is more than meets the ear and more than meets the eye. So I wanted to talk about it tonight, give you some examples. We shared some information in the newsletter. So shouts to me for doing the newsletter. The newsletter is called also Hip Hop Can Save America, the newsletter. And we put out an edition this year. I'll put oops, dang it, wrong button. Hold on, hold please. We put out an edition today that broke down what I think are some of the things to think about the year in hip hop. And again, I put it out to the Facebook posting group, and I'll read you some of the responses we got there. It just didn't track with how I see hip hop and how some of y'all might see hip hop or should see hip hop. Because again, you get this general consensus thing going on, this perception amongst the masses thing going on, and they don't look a little bit deeper like we do. And so I wanted to make sure that we give them that resource, right? Because first of all, it's more than the music, as you know. We're going to talk about, maybe not this week, this might be a part 1, part 2. But there was an incredible amount of music that was released this year, a wide spectrum of hip hop music. And I don't always talk about the music. I always don't talk about the artists. We have conversations that are outside of that. But when I started looking at some of the people that I go to who pay attention to like the music that's being released over the hip hop spectrum, the diaspora of hip hop, it was so much stuff this year that was like really, again, full spectrum. And so it bothers me when someone who really doesn't dig like we do and doesn't really pay attention like we do will say that they're not happy with the content of the music that's being released. And I find that so hard to believe. If you do anything to try and find any type of rap music that you want to listen to, that you can't find it, I'm convinced that people just don't look, and that's fine. But like I always say, like, I don't know how it is to visit Hawaii. I've never been there, but I can't really talk ish about Hawaii if I've never been there. You feel me? So a little bit of that has to be eased up if we're going to want to, continue all the good things about the music and the culture. So in the newsletter, which you subscribe to for free at mannyfaces.substack.com, it's full of resources and links and news that isn't about dumb-ish and just great stuff to inspire you about hip hop. I'm going to just really quickly run down. This is part 1 of part 2. And I gave like 3 or 4 examples, trusted sources, as I call them, where I get information from. I'm not an encyclopedia of current rap releases. It's not my thing. Y'all know what I do. I do this. And I don't have time to pay attention to what's coming out. By the way, in the chat, post your favorite rap release of 2024. Let's do it. Let's just go favorite rap release of 2024. Andrew Wang, I think I know what yours is. Ms. Parker, I want to know what your favorite rap release for 2024 was. And I pointed to a gentleman named Wally Hart. And Wally Hart's a Facebook friend. He's a hip-hop professor, like Xavier College, somewhere in Illinois. And he's been on the list of, people I need to talk to and have interviewed on this show, because anyone who's doing hip hop in academia is interesting to me and we should talk. And Wally Hart has, for months and months and months, like religiously, just been like, here are my favorite, top, or a bunch of releases that came out in October, like rap releases and da-da-da. And just does it, like pays attention, like, I know there's a few places you can get this information from, but just puts it on his Facebook post and say, here's some of my favorites. Now he has a wide ranging, I don't know, taste in hip hop music. So you'll see, mostly kind of like a more mature audience might be looking for, not necessarily, younger folk. And again, there's nothing wrong. We don't have anything wrong with what mainstream, rap music is pushed out necessarily. You could turn on Vivo, you could turn on your local radio station, whatever's trending on YouTube is usually like the younger set, like a little bit aimed at the younger set, not always, something that might have sort of the substance we're looking for as older folk, or maybe we're tied to our generational preferences, if we're from the South, or even if we're from New York, we like a boom bap sound. Like, so Wally Hart has a little bit of a good, to me, a good grasp on a wide spectrum that includes a little bit of all of those things. And that's why I go to him. Like, I just, for other reasons, he's a Facebook friend, and so I pointed to his top 24 hip hop albums of 2024. And again, when I went on Facebook, it was like, yo, how was hip hop this year? And again, I don't specify music, but people tend to default to music. We're going to have a part 2 conversation about how hip hop, the culture, has delivered for 2024, whether that would get presents from Santa. Spoiler, I say yes, but people will look at things like, I don't know, Kendrick and Drake, and you might have an idea, an opinion as to whether that was good for the culture or not, still attached to the music. You might be like Fat Joe, we'll talk about it in a little bit, who said, this might be the worst year in hip hop history. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm just talking about all this great music that came out. And you talking about the worst year in history. I don't understand. What do you mean? How could it be the worst year in history? Just look at Kendrick and look at Doechii and look at, I don't know, some of the names y'all putting in here. Tyler, the Creator's album. Definitely Doechii. Rhapsody, right? Great. Okay. That's what I'm saying. I like Glorilla. I think what Glorilla did is great. Rakim came back with an interesting album, South Chosen Hip Hop in the Building, right? So we have like this wide spectrum from all over the place. Like, what do you want? You want to shake your ass in a club and in a hookah lounge? You got that. You want to be intellectual, lyrical, spiritual miracle? You got that. You want to have music that you could talk to your kids about, find a common ground? You could do that. You want OGs that are doing albums like Common and LL? You got that. You want like breakout stars like Doechii? You got that. You want like what do you want? But what Fat Joe was saying was it's such a terrible year in hip hop because some of our celebrity iconic figures are being, his words, scrutinized, alluding to Puffy and Jay, and that alone makes this the worst year in hip hop history. Because our icons are being scrutinized, interesting term, and that it's hard to be a celebrity. And people ran with that. And what you see over and over and over and over and over again is the headline, Fat Joe, hip hop, worst year in history. And that's such cap. That's so disrespectful, and so unintellectual, and so moronic to even attach all those words together. On Math Hoffa's My Expert Opinion podcast. So I felt the need to write something. Let's put some of these on a screen. Yeah. Oh, here, wait, hold on. I got to go back. Chromacopia. I think that's how you pronounce it. Andrew Wang. That was Tyler, the Creator's joint. So I haven't fully gotten into. I've heard a few, and I love it. Or Come and See by Tori Deshawn. All right, let's name names. Christian rap is making a comeback. I actually heard a Christian rap joint on the next person I'm going to big up on the show. Wally Hart was one good source, one good trusted source that I find on Facebook that you can go to. And I heard a great sort of Christian rap song that was pretty dope. Miss Parker, Rhapsody, yes. Kendrick, yes. Tyler, yes. Andrew Wang thought that Snoop was better than Kendrick. Interesting. There was some talk about Kendrick's album. Obviously, it got the the buzz going, and Squabble Up's a great song, and all that, the GNK album. But like, is it better? Like, or has he put himself on such a high pedestal that even a really good album now seems like it's not a good album because his other albums are really great? Like, who knows? But that's all preference. Again, I don't care about the subjectivity. I really don't. Again, Rakim did drop an album, disappointed some folks, Chosen, because, you know, not enough Rakim, right? Like, it wasn't a Rakim album, it was sort of a compilation. But okay, any Rakim is good Rakim. Once again, honorable mention to Glorilla, and then definitely Doechii. Mophead says Michael Christmas dropped an album called Unsexy. Schoolboy Q, Common and Pete Rock. Coda the Friend, good album. I've heard good things. Oh my goodness, some great mentions here. The Blue in Exile album was fantastic. So much good stuff. And Ka released and then passed away, the great Ka from Brooklyn. And Chosen brings up a point. Now, this was a point that someone brought up, and when I asked them, hey, how's hip hop doing this year? They were like, nah, terrible, man. Sales were terrible, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, so that's how you judge whether hip hop had a good year or not. Do we see the problem with that? Do we see the thing that's wrong with that? I know you do, PRism. You know what I mean? I know that you do, like, that when people think of hip hop and you say, was it a good year? We just named some incredible, creative, talented folk that dropped really great projects. But someone, a random person, a fan of hip hop, a lover of rap, their reaction isn't to say, yeah, man, great year, man, so much good music. Their reaction is to say that the industry, the rap music industry, isn't doing that well. Matter of fact, they had said, I should go back. I don't want to like misquote them and even say who they were. I had it on here. It was Jason on Facebook said hip hop had the worst year in sales in 30 years or so. Yeah, there were some good moments and some artists that had breakthrough moments, but the music industry is still a business. And if the music doesn't sell, then it ultimately suffers. And people will say it's not about the money. LOL. Okay, but artists can't eat CDs and streams. Nobody is clicking. So if the money dries up, so do careers. So I said, okay. I mean, we can talk about the industry side of things. It's weird. Like sometimes we say, you know, F the industry. We just want good music. And then when people say, man, we had a really good year for good music, people are like, yeah, but the industry, man, like you're never going to have Blue in Exile or Rhapsody or, you know, Unlearn the World, Our Homie, or Sky Zoo or Absol or Napoleon the Legend or Freddie Gibbs or you know, Tyler being like multi-million-dollar platinum record sales people, you know, artists. It's not going to happen. But are we judging the success of whether Santa Claus says that hip hop had a good year or not based on album sales? Now, first of all, fact is 2023 was really bad. 2024 is better. I haven't been able to parse all the details, but the assertion that it was its worst year is wrong. It's actually on an upswing. There were better commercial releases this year that did better. I don't know the exact numbers and such. So how does that reflect on your opinion? Oh, maybe it's a little comeback year. Maybe when you have a Kendrick Drake and you have a Doechii and you have a you know, sort of an exciting bubbling just underneath the mainstream level of excitement, and you have a breakout from a Glorilla and you have, you know, these things, maybe that's a good sign. Shouldn't we say this is good? It's all in an upswing and we get all this wide spectrum of material. Shouldn't we be happy? Shouldn't we be happy about that? And say, I don't really care if the industry supports all this stuff. I know that this good music exists and these artists are out there. Like, isn't that important? Isn't that success? Ms. Parker says success in a capitalistic society is some people's idea of good. Exactly. We're going to try and push back on that and let them know that there are other ways to make money, first of all, besides album sales. Like, I mean, really, we still, my man actually mentioned CDs in his post, bro. So I think we also need to move forward in our thinking a little bit. I've seen a bunch of, you know, music figures on commercials. I seen Megan Thee Stallion doing commercials. We see Snoop all the time doing commercials. We see younger artists. There was one, oh man. We see YouTube influencers on commercials on TV. They're getting this money. They're getting their bags in different ways. So if we say that hip hop album sales are down, therefore hip hop is bad, but we're neglecting the fact that, people are able to make their money in different ways, well, then we're not doing a good job of even reporting on the capitalistic part of the culture. Amen? So I'm wondering, really, what's going on when people say they're not having a good year in hip hop? And if you're saying that it's the music quality, you're out of your mind. If you could say, and I'll go back to my man, just one place that I find some of this stuff, my man Wally Hart. Now, let me actually put this up in a view that y'all can see nice and cute. Oh, wrong camera. Look at this. All right, let's go. I'm here, y'all. Master Ace dropped an album. If you an old school hip hop head and you telling me nothing came out this year and you're not listening to Master Ace, then what are we doing? That's really on you. Our man Unlearn the World. Good album, The God That Sins. Mega Ran, an OG. J. Cole put out stuff this year. Razzcast, Lupe Fiasco, Common and Pete Rock. Again, Doechii, Blue and Exile. Great album. Kendrick, Rhapsody, Dizzy Wright, Tyler the Creator, Slum Village, Sky Zoo. I mean, your favorite rapper's favorite, like the wordsmith of wordsmiths, Sky Zoo. Ab-Soul, Benny the Butcher, Napoleon the Legend, who's a brilliant independent artist that we're friends with. Freddie Gibbs, A1 and High John, The Bad Seed, Stu Bangers and Wordsworth, Fillmore Green, Rock Nest Monster, and Rusty Jux. Shouts to Brooklyn and Long Island. This is a hell of a list, bro. And if you're not listening to any of those albums and you're not saying, and you're still saying that musically we didn't have a good year, you're out of your mind. You're not trying. You're just not. Just admit it. It's fine. You're not trying. So then maybe don't say anything, because you give the impression to people listening that we had such a bad year, and that's not so helpful. That's right. Busta Rhymes did have that Walmart. Just see Busta on the Walmart commercial. Woo-wee. Anyway, listen, let's keep it going. I appreciate y'all talking amongst yourselves in the chat. Beautiful discussions. Killer Mike did have, so he put out that sort of a surprise album, a free album. That was this year, right? Andrew Wang, you told me about that. So yes. So we had great examples of, So we had great examples of albums that I just ran through a bunch. That Wally Hart, one person, just if you don't know where to go, just there's one person that I know that does it, and I'm gonna give you a couple of others as we move forward. Andrew Wang brought up a great point about NPR and the Tiny Desk series, and I can't even tell you. I wasn't prepared for it. Let me see if they have a list for 2024. Again, when you say, oh, did hip hop have a good year? And all you think of is, album sales were down. Like that doesn't tell me whether we had a good year or not. You know what I mean? I'm looking at now the list of, we could do this together, even though you can't really see it. I'm just trying to look. Tanashi had one. Of course, Jeezy was probably one of the earliest ones this year. Had a great Tiny Desk on NPR. Big Sean had one. I'm just looking at the hip hop names, the rappers mostly. You had a few others, obviously. Anna Tijoux. Bob James had a great Tiny Desk, and if you really know hip hop, then you know how important it was for Bob James to do a Tiny Desk. Thames had a Tiny Desk. Tierra Whack had a Tiny Desk. Flo Milli had a Tiny Desk. It was just a great lineup, and whoever's doing, I know who's doing the Tiny Desk at NPR, and I've actually reached out to try to get them on the show because it is doing a great job. The Locks, of course, the Locks had a great Tiny Desk this year. And what you saw from some of these performances was just, again, adding to the spectrum of hip hop musicality, of hip hop performance, of being elevated to that level, of being worthy. Not that we need validation from a place like NPR, but you're damn right we should be on NPR. La Russell. And if you talk about commercially again, and how bad or good a year hip hop is having, why aren't you saying, but also look at what La Russell's doing, right? La Russell's independent movement is so worthy of being amplified and talked about. That's a great example of what 2024 gave hip hop, an example of an independent movement that's flourishing and thriving, that really operates on a whole different set of rules. That's somebody you should actually like really be studying and amplifying and be proud of, and call that, like, that's a brilliant year that man had to make it to Tiny Desk, and all the other stuff he's been putting out throughout the last couple of years. I miss Duran Jones. Did Duran Jones and the Indications? That's not hip hop, but they're one of my favorite bands. Duran Jones and Indication had a Tiny Desk in November, and I missed it, and I'm gonna go catch that because that's my people's. Of course, Doechii, which, I mean, blew everybody out the water, as it should. Of course, Doechii's performance on Stephen Colbert show. I mean, Doechii's doing it. But I said this last episode of this show. Don't think that Doechii, and she's a, we don't want to say she's a once in a generation artist. She's not. She's really not. But that takes nothing away from her. There are other artists that are very, 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 very good, and very, very, and would be, if you saw them, very, very inspiring to you if you saw them. Now, she played the game really well, and she's made her way to the forefront, and she had great, obviously what's happening over there on her label and all that stuff has been paying off and working. And not every artist has those opportunities, but that's why we look at lists like Wally Hart's and other folks that we're going to give some shout outs to, so that we find those artists. I remember, I didn't do it, but Andrew Wang and I was talking about this, that I mentioned Doechii about 8 months ago on Facebook. And I was like, yo, for every, it was again, this generational talk, because there was so many people saying, yo, LL Cool J dropped the album, Common and Pete Rock. That's what we missing in hip hop. That's what we need in hip hop. And I'm like, listen, not for nothing, but for every Common and Pete Rock, there's a Doechii. So you need to like listen to both. You'll like both. There's no reason. I mean, I can't guarantee that you'll like both. It's really hard to predict. But if you like Common, if you a Common LL old school head, you don't like Doechii. I don't know. It reminds me of a thing that Peter Rosenberg said from Hot 97, who I obviously don't agree with very often. But let's play a clip from him. I just want to share something he said that made me think of what we're talking about now. That if you're a old school kind of person and you're not really paying attention to new stuff, because sometimes you also hear like an album like LL or Common and say, nah, man, it's whack, or Snoop, it's not like what I remember. It's not what they could do. It's not what they were, it doesn't do it for me like their old material. And I thought Peter Rosenberg had an interesting take on this, and I want to say something about this.
Listening to this Snoop Dre album, and I had a realization, because I posted about how much I liked it on X, and a lot of the comments back were like dissing the album. And, it's not this, these Dre beats, blah, blah, blah. And by the way, I didn't say the album was The Chronic or 2001, for instance, but I think a lot of hip-hop heads, or once hip-hop heads, live in a terrible space where you've written off new music because you're too busy, you got a job, you got kids, I get it. You're too busy to really pay attention to all the new dope artists that are out there, and there are a lot of them. So you don't pay attention to them, and you think all of it is the same crap that you hear on mainstream radio in the middle of the day, and that's not accurate at all. And then, at the same time, when artists like an LL Cool J or a Snoop Dogg or whoever it may be drops a great album in 2024, you only like it if it sounds exactly like their best work of 35 years ago. And it's an incredibly unfair standard. That's not how artistry works. Artists grow. Artists don't make the same music their entire life. They change like we change. And what a joyless place to be if you're a fan, that you don't like the new stuff and you hold the old guys to an impossible standard. Like, you ever think that maybe it's not hip-hop that changed, but you that changed?
Woo!
I was just listening to this.
Woo! Bars. He said, hey, yo. He said, I got to give one of these. He said, do you ever think that it's not hip hop that's changed? It's you that changed. And I made a comment on, and I don't, shut up, Peter.
I was just listening
Shut
to
up,
this.
Peter. I've had beef with Peter Rosenberg. Not beef. Peter Rosenberg's fine. He's actually a good supporter of underground hip hop in New York. And that's great. But he also rides for the capitalistic destroyer of hip hop culture, which is Hot 97. So it's a very contradictory position to be in. And so because I have a lot of trouble reconciling Hot 97's role in the game, he falls under that umbrella. But okay, other than that, rides for underground indie hip hop. And so I'm going to give him the half-hearted salute. That being said, what I said on his post, which got a bunch of likes, I said, many of the heads who say they, quote, miss real hip hop really are only missing a time in their life that happened to have hip hop featured in it prominently. They don't actually care about hip hop anymore. And people seem to resonate with people. And I think that's what he was getting at. Like, if you really love and care, you're not going to be so critical. It's such a terrible place to be if you say you love hip hop and rap music and this was like what you've lived and loved all your life, to sit back today and be like, everything sucks. It's the worst year ever, when all this great music came out, regardless of whether like the industry is, who cares about the industry? Did you have a good year listening to music? Because if you paid attention to what's being put out there, you probably had a good year. So I don't know. Prism, Chosen Hip Hop brings up again, hip hop music that's not rap music. Brilliant point. There's a lot of hip hop influenced music that's outside of the realm. There's a lot of sort of hybridized, hip hop obviously influences everything from, R&B to Afro beats to shabuzi and country music. So again, if you talk about the influence that hip hop music and culture is having on, as it always has, on the world around us, we can find many positive influences, crossovers, hybrids, genre bending that happens in and about. And so that's something to also look out for. What's also, I'm saying, like, you talking about albums and charts and billboards and all that. Like, first of all, Billboard, this is a longer conversation, but Billboard still groups hip hop and rap and R&B together. It's hip hop / R&B. Like, they don't even separate the two. And so they'll say that, like, this is the most popular genre. And I'm like, but what's the most popular genre? Is it hip hop? So it's all weird and industry driven, and it's done for, like, it's all outdated, and it doesn't actually matter. It's a longer conversation. I'm going to put out an essay on it. I've been working on in the background on the newsletter. By the way, I've been saying this whole time on the bottom, newsletter on the bottom, you should definitely subscribe to that, because we put out information like this, and we put out, I guess, editorials about this. But like the idea that hip hop needs an adult contemporary, category, right? And a lot of people talked about this, and it's another discussion for another night, but I also don't think so. And I understand the reasoning behind it, but I don't think so, because it's not like we need that demarcation to be able to find, because we're talking about it tonight. And it exists, and things are grouped differently now, and Billboard's charts don't matter as much as Spotify categories or playlists. And there you can segment by, if I wanted to listen to like the artists, and I'll put them up again, Prism, the artists, can I not put up again? I'm going to try. Instrumental producers, like you could put up like, Japanese boom bap hip hop instrumental, lo-fi study music. You know what I mean? And you'll get a playlist of that. Like, you can find whatever you want. Whatever you want in hip hop can be found by punching it into literally the most you know, I was watching the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Like our phones are like the Hitchhiker's Guide to hip hop. Like it gives us everything we could possibly want. And so all you have to do is that. Sure, Andrew Wang or Apple Music, but I'm like a whatever, you know. Bob Knudsen, thanks for checking in. I did want to. There's if you got I think I texted you also or whatever. There's also a couple of other links in the newsletter that I think are important because I'd love to expand people's horizons. I know that you're not a longtime fan of hip hop, but please check out the other links and we'll talk. I'll shout them out in this session right here. I hope y'all still rocking with me. I love the talk that's going on in the background. Shouts to Miss Parker. Shouts to Chosen Hip Hop. Shouts to Andrew Wang. Shouts to Bob Knudsen. I'm very amped. I'm very because it gets me so aggravated that I was like, hey, how did we do this year in hip hop? And people were like, meh. And I'm like, meh. You know, meh what? Like, what meh? How do you define meh? Because I'm like, this is a pretty, if anything, an eclectic year. And a lot of good, again, it's really all subjective, and I hate using good. So that's why I say like spectrum and diverse and whatever. A lot of stuff. You know, that's happening, that's coming out. I wanted to shout out, and again, I pointed out to my man Wally Hart on Facebook, just a guy, just a random guy. And I want to point out to another, yo, Nelson's in the building, a historic year in hip. Thank you. Someone who knows. Miss Parker, I am eclectic. And that's why I use the word eclectic. And it's a very good word. And I like it. Thank you. Mophead, my man, my mellow says, lo-fi hip hop is unfortunately getting infested with AI channels. Yeah, that's maybe one of the first casualties of AI war. The lo-fi hip hop producers. I can see how that's I don't want to obviously disparage, lo-fi producers. It's actually a great genre, and it's and I love it a lot. But it's probably relatively easy because it's sort of it's a genre that doesn't really go outside of boundaries so much. It's probably pretty easy for AI replication. So yeah, I think that's interesting. We're gonna have a talk this year in 2025 about AI and hip hop. There's pros and cons. Timberland representing Suno. That's interesting. I can see why that's concerning, Andrew. We're going to talk about that. I think there's pros and cons like anything else. I'm a journalist. I'm a writer. I've been working in journalism for years. And obviously AI and the content creation space, journalism space has been a problem for a while. I don't think it's all doom and gloom, just like I don't think there's doom and gloom for hip hop. But we'll talk about it a little bit more next year. I've got some ideas. We're going to talk about all this stuff next year. So yeah, let's keep it going. By the way, if you look at the bottom of the page, one of the ways you can help me keep doing this next year is by becoming a member of the show, sustaining member, basically a patron, patreon.com/mannyfaces. It really makes a difference. It's really going to be hard this year to pull this off continuously, all this stuff, time and money and all that. I have a job. I make podcasts. I do okay. But as we know, journalism continues to take a decline. The new administration coming in means that there might be less dollars. I work with some nonprofits that make podcasts. And of course, if you know me, those nonprofits focus on things like progressive politics. And, certainly no one's going to be rushing to fund Hip Hop Can Save America because they don't want hip hop to save America. So it has to be up to us. So just a quick plea. As I do, it's a gift-giving season. You might be tapped out from succumbing to the capitalistic demands of the holiday season. I understand. But if anyone can, spare a few dollars a month, keep the lights on here. You can catch that. I'll put it in the chat. I will not be mad at you if you leave for a minute and then go do that and then come back, or you can do it afterwards. It's fine. But it really does help. And I want to thank Andrew and a few other folks. I don't know who's here tonight, but we have about 15 or 16, folks who give on a regular basis. You wouldn't be alone. And it really does help. There's subscriptions involved. The interview platforms cost money to do them at a high quality level. So I'm not doing it on Zoom and, things like that. It really helps. So thank you for all of you who are, you saw them actually bigged up at the beginning of the show or their names. So thank you to them. And thank you to you if you could find a way to, $5, $10 a month, Patreon, do your thing. It helps. I remember living in New York, and I listened to WNYC, which is their NPR affiliate, public radio. And every, I don't know, 4 times a year, they'll come on and they'll do this fun drive and say, yo, public radio is really supported by you. And I know that some of it gets funded by the government. Actually, they've been trying to chop that funding from the government as well for years. But a lot of it is funded by the public. And it always struck me that, ballet probably doesn't exist anymore, if not for people recognizing that ballet is a cultural, treasure and needs to be supported. And they give their money to the people who are, culture bearers and stewards of ballet culture. And I remember listening to WNYC, and it's the NPR affiliate, and I got a job, and I felt like a grown up, and I was like, I'm going to donate. And I did for like a year. I gave to NPR. I gave to public radio. I listened to it when I was driving to work. I found it to be informative and influential and important. And if it wasn't for the public, that doesn't happen. And so as a grown up, loving a thing, I decided I'd, give them $10 a month and support it. And I think if not me, find somebody that's doing this hip hop thing right and help support them. Otherwise, we just go away. It just doesn't happen because they're not going to push us. And we'll get to a level that we don't need you, God willing. But in the meantime, in between time, anything you can do to help. So I want to thank you for that. I had to say it. And if you could do it, there's a link there, mannyfaces.com. Patreon.com/mannyfaces. I could also be hired to speak and do keynotes and to do professional development for teachers and businesses. So whatever. Let's help me help y'all. Real quick, I wanted to go back to the newsletter. Mind you, we do have a great newsletter. Y'all still with me? I love it in this chat. There's a lot of conversation. What I miss? Cameron and Mace touring together next year. So again, I love it because we talk about can hip hop, if they're not making money making records, but Cameron and Mace are making money doing sports talk. So there's other ways to, to flex your creative muscle, even if you're an artist. I love it. I love seeing it. So yeah. So again, Wally Hart was on Facebook and gives a good rundown of music. And this is part 1. Next week, let's get back here and we're going to talk about, I saw Chosen Hip Hop said it earlier, that on the educational front, on the activism front, the collaboration, the getting together of folks, there's a bubbling happening in hip hop as a cultural force, as a force for the greater good. I talk about it. I big it up. I know Chosen Hip Hop and other organizations, do their part. And I think that there's going to be a coalescing over the next couple of years that if we play our cards right, will really amplify hip hop's potential for positive social change. So that's what we want to talk about next year. Andrew, next week. Andrew, yes, breaking in the Olympics, definitely going to have that part of the cultural. This is music this week. And then next week, let's come back and take out the year fully and talk about what was the end all be all of that. And I've written about that, by the way, at the newsletter. So please check the newsletter out. There was a thing I posted a couple things back where I said, basically, look, here it is on the screen. Let me just jump over there. Where I basically said breaking needs to be remembered for being in the Olympics and not just for that thing that happened. So there's a lot of positive takeaways that came about from breaking being in the Olympics. And I want to talk about them and bring that back into the consciousness. Because what y'all don't know is that y'all might know, what people don't know or want to remember is that, the Red Bull finals, World Finals just happened last month. Red Bull RC BC1, whatever they call it, the breaking finals. Because remember, Red Bull and McDonald's before that, they've been doing world breaking championships for years before the Olympics. But of course, most people were like, I'm only going to pay attention now. I'm going to jump on the Olympics bandwagon. And that's fine. But then all of a sudden, after not watching it for years and it being out of sight, out of mind, now all of a sudden everybody's a breaking correspondent and a break-in expert, right? And everyone has an opinion on it, and everyone breaks it all down. And so what I tried to do during that time was say, hold on. I understand how this looks, but let's not throw the worldwide breaking community baby out with the ray gun from Australia bathwater. You feel me? Like, let's not do that, because we do the entirety of that culture and that movement a disservice when we do that. So yeah. So I want to see us talk about that one more time, looking back at it and saying, again, I said this in the last newsletter, I said, all the people that were quick to have an opinion about what they saw in the Olympics, were they watching the Red Bull BC1 finals like a month ago or 3 weeks ago? Because Netherlands, by the way, the Netherlands won. The Netherlands won, not Australia. The Netherlands. Do you know how good the breakers are in Netherlands? I don't. So, because I don't watch it enough. But what we're going to do, and I told you this, is that this is the one place that I'm going to make sure that on the calendar of events that's in that newsletter that you see right here, is we're going to put that information out there, because I could not find one for the life of me, one hip hop media outlet in all the land that gave the freestyle session world breaking final dates, which happened like quarterfinals, semifinals, all throughout the United States. Freestyle Session, it's another organization that promotes breaking. And I went to their world finals a couple years ago, and it was amazing. And they had quarterfinals last year. And I put those dates in my newsletter, so that if you happen to live in, I don't know where, I know the finals were in LA, but you know, wherever they were, Phoenix or Chicago, whatever the dates of the cities were, if you happen to be there, you'd be able to go. And I didn't see nary one hip hop. They all published ray gun articles, but none of them are publishing and talking about breaking today. Ooh, I know who is. Me, you. We're here talking about breaking today. So consider that when you consider who to give your hard-earned money to in the Patreon. Anyway, so that's all I'm saying is I'd love to talk about that stuff next week. We kind of gave a preview of it, and all is well and good, because I think it was great that breaking was in the Olympics. I think it was great that people are able to, if they want to talk about breaking at an elevated level now, and they could point to everyone else in the Olympics, because everyone else besides Homegirl was pretty good. They're clearly really good. The breaking community, by and large, supported breaking in the Olympics. So those are the folks that are in it every day, and they're cool with it. So, I mean, that means something. That counts for something. Why? We didn't like what we saw. We didn't like. They said, no. You don't understand. Here's all the good things. Here's who the judges were. Here's that weird judging thing that they had to abide by. Rules that were set up by the ballroom dance committee that we didn't always have control over. There was so many nuances to what we saw, but the takeaway from it all. And I say this all the time. I talked to a friend of mine, or actually a family member, to be honest. She's an older white lady. She doesn't really have a connection to hip hop culture. She's not tuned into this world. She's older, and she's never, really been attached to it. And so I'm sort of this conduit, and I gauge certain things by how she sees them. And sometimes they're not very positive towards how she feels hip hop, music or culture or people associated with it, because of, how the general public and people outside of hip hop get, and sometimes even inside, get fooled into thinking like that hip hop is all about negative stuff and blah, 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 blah. And years ago, I remember she said something. It's one of the things that stuck with me in this whole, mission that I am on, to tell the world about all the great things that hip hop does. And she told me, she goes, well, I don't really like rap music, I don't understand. Yeah, that's fine. I get it. Why would you? You're, 70-year-old, white woman that never listened to rap stuff. It's fine. I get it. Like, I'm not, I don't listen to Zydeco. It's fine. It's whatever. But then she goes, I used to like the breakdancing though. Yeah, that was fun. Used to like the breakdancing. Again, semantics, is called breaking, but whatever. And here's an older lady that did see something positive within hip hop culture and an art form and artistry. And it struck me, this is years ago, but obviously the Olympics didn't happen like overnight. People have been doing breaking consistently at a high level from the early days when it came to existence. And she said, I used to like it, as if it didn't exist anymore. And people watching the Olympics tuned in to see breaking for the first damn time in how many years, as if it didn't exist anymore, as if it was reincarnated overnight. And I'm like, yo, y'all really, if you really want to know more about it, here's the Red Bulls, here's the freestyle sessions, here's the, organizations, here are the communities, here are the local stuff. Shouts to, I don't know, damn it, right here in Atlanta, Georgia. She runs like a, I don't say a dojo, but you know what I'm saying, like a dance studio, teaching breaking. Oh, what is this sister's name? I can't remember. I'm so bad. I want to shout her out, but I just want to shout out a thing. It'll come to me. But right here in Atlanta. In Atlanta. So if you're in Atlanta, you could actually bring your young kids to like breaking school, basically. So if you're so I'm going off on next week's tangent. Stop. Let me come back around. Andrew Wayne, I don't forget about anything. We're going to talk about graffiti. We're going to talk about the great things that graffiti did. The pop-up shops, the Miami Museum. We're going to talk about graffiti making a beautiful, being incorporated into art exhibitions in museums throughout the world. There's so much good stuff. Anyway, like I said, all of the things that we think used to be. I used to like beatboxing, and beatboxing still exists. Beatboxing is there's still pockets. You know what I mean? There's the American Beatbox Championship. There's organizations, and that's what they need. They need us to be talking about them and bringing it to light. They need us. They need y'all. They need me. They need y'all to help support me. Anyway, next week, we're talking about the other art forms and the other cultural influences. This week it's music, because I don't always talk about the music, but I know what's going on in the music. All right. So again, if you want to know what's going on in music and you're unimpressed by what you come across in your daily whatevers, especially if you're someone that has a kid in your life, whether it be a child, you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, especially if you're a teacher. We talk to a lot of hip hop educators, so y'all know, but I think more and more educators are stumbling upon this show and what we talk about because they're hearing about who we talk to and how we talk about the importance of hip hop in an educational setting. Again, things that a lot of people just don't think of, or they don't think it's an oxymoron. It's not an oxymoron. You're an oxymoron. It's not an oxymoron. It's a brilliant intersection that has to be used and explored. Shouts to, I won't say his name, as a music educator, we've talked about doing some things, and he says that one of the things he gets from me is that he realizes he gets a lot of like intersection between hip hop and education and how important hip hop is and the depth and breadth of it and how it could be used to connect with young people and all those things. And he says, and this was brilliant because I didn't even, like, it's bolder than I would go. And he says, I think it's at a point where, especially music educators, because he's a music educator, but I would say educators in general, it's gotten to the point where you cannot ignore hip hop. It's not that you could bring it in. That now and Dr. Chris Emden's talked about this, that you're literally doing a disservice. You're causing violence to your children, especially in communities of color or, school districts that have been traditionally underserved or underloved or appreciated or underfunded, which tend to be communities of color because racism. You're doing a disservice and you're causing violent harm against your students if you're not tying into things that work for them. And that includes cultural responsiveness and cultural affirmations, and hip hop is that. And I'm like, yeah, like we're trying to advocate for those things, but to actually say that it's now gotten to a point where you cannot ignore it. You can't, it's not just like, oh, here's a cool thing to add on, that you're failing them if you don't incorporate it from the get. And I appreciated that. So all of those things being said, music is important in making those connections with young people. So if you're someone that has a young person in your life, as a parent, you have a common, especially as a parent that came up on hip hop, you have a common ground. You may not like anything they listen to, but there is a common ground that y'all can explore together. We see this talked about from our mental health professional friends who incorporate hip hop, music, and culture into their therapy. We've seen it from Dr. Raphael Travis, who I'm going to mention in a minute, who wrote The Healing Power of Hip Hop, a seminal book on the topic. Dr. Ian Levy, and J.C. Hall, folks who have built recording studios inside classrooms, inside schools, turned an elective class into therapeutic, cathartic music made. Dr. Elliot Gann, therapeutic beat making across the country. These are revolutionary ways to save lives. That if you're in any of those fields, education, mental health therapy, school administration, healthcare, maybe you work at a daycare center, you're in a nonprofit that's helping, underserved youth or at risk or, whatever term y'all want to use. We don't necessarily like that term. And you're not incorporating, if you're not thinking about these things, then you are completely failing, because we're showing you receipts of when it works. So if you're working with young people, you know that the connection is through music. You know that that's where it starts. We're talking culture and we're talking all these, but hip hop music. But according to you, because you're not tuned in, hip hop music is violent and misogynistic and drug riddled and death and all these things. Sure, some of that exists. But what we're here to tell you is that that's not all that exists. Oops, I was on the right screen. Oh no, I was on the right screen. That's not all that exists. And if you want to find out, again, go to the newsletter. You see it down here. You check the last edition that I put out today. And in here, again, Wally Hart's picks for, like, if you're an old school hip hop head or a mature hip hop head, or you want some hip hop with substance, you're there. The next entrant in that list is DJ Hoodwink. Shouts one time. Might be in the building. I teach about hip hop culture and well-being, and that's one big thing, even among students that only listen to hip hop. They're like, I had no idea that these things existed. Definitely can't ignore bringing hip hop into the classroom, says Miss Park. You can't. It's not something you can just do on a whim. And it's also not something that you can just do. I'll get to Hoodwink in a second. Just one more point, because I want to big it up. You can't do on a whim, and you can't do without sort of an understanding of what you're doing, right? It's not a gimmick. This isn't a trick. As Dr. Gloria Ladson Billings, affectionately known as the OG, one of the OGs of culturally responsive and culturally relevant pedagogy, says, we want our teachers to not just do hip hop. We want our teachers to be hip hop. And so, again, this now is a step above. If you're a school administrator, if you're someone in the Board of Education, if you're a parent in a community and you have kids that aren't being served properly, in your opinion, culturally, aesthetically, then open your mouth at the Board of Education meetings and says, we want to do this and we want to do it right. So anyway, something to think about. Going back to, again, where can music come into play? My man, DJ Hoodwink, I wanted to big him up because he runs a Discord server. Shouts, by the way, if you're in Discord, give me put a D in the chat. If you're on Discord, I'm not going to tell you why. Andrew Wang, don't give it away. Flow Story, don't give it away. Just want to know if you're in Discord, if you use Discord as a platform. On Discord, a server named The Healing Power of Hip Hop. Interesting. There he highlights, I'm reading from my own newsletter. These are words I wrote. There he highlights several high-powered DJs doing their DJ thing. There's a lot of DJs that, spin music on Twitch or on, TikTok or on YouTube, and they have sets all the time. And sometimes you want to have a really good DJ in the background playing music. You don't think that DJing exists anymore. You think the DJs are all just push-button DJs or wedding DJs. No, they're real DJs that are doing really good work, and they're fun to listen to. And somebody's giving you a constantly updated place where you can find live sets and recent sets. So that's one thing. On the Discord server, and also with his own mixes, his own playlists, and his own mixtapes, he highlights a steady stream of music along several themes, some of which include esteem tracks, self-esteem, resilience tracks, music about being resilient, growth tracks, community tracks, and social change tracks. One would imagine political or activism kind of music. This is so valuable. to people who are looking for conscious rap or substantive rap, or perhaps teachers or counselors or other professionals who recognize the ability to connect with young people through music, but want to be a bit selective. Many times we feel this sort of music only lives in the past, and DJ Hoodwink is showing that it doesn't. Two recent standout projects. Let me blow this up so y'all can actually see this a little bit. Recently put out a thing called Old School, the mixtape. And I'm quoting, it says, this mix was inspired by a street interview with KRS-One where he emphasized the innovation and curiosity of youth alongside the wisdom and experience of elders. It's this generation gap that we keep talking about. Can't be bridged, can't be fixed. Young people don't care about their elders and hip hop history and blah, blah, blah. And older heads are just old hip hop heads, OGs. Shut up, Unc. You don't know what's going on. Well, this is a mix that brings those worlds together by saying, in fact, this is the key to our future and leveraging the best of each and every generation. But we must be present and open to learning in ways that we are not used to. Old School, the mixtape on Mixcloud. I linked to it. It's a dope mixtape for that purpose. And then lastly, the Hoodwink 100. This is something that Hoodwink does every year. I think it's actually more than 100. I think it's like 150 at this point, maybe 160. Amazing. The essential playlist for those wanting to look inward and outward as they learn, grow, and work toward positive change. This is also great material for therapists, teachers, and other professionals using hip-hop in practice, with the caveat to review the content for what's appropriate for your setting and maybe consider radio-friendly or edited versions as needed. But what I'm saying is here's 160 songs that you, a rap fan that wants like music that's, I don't know, whatever it is you say is missing, whether it's substance or consciousness or black power or resiliency or fighting the power or being the power or attacking the power or, lifting oneself up or lifting up a community or lifting up others or love or self-love or self-expression or any of that. There's a playlist on Spotify, the Hoodwink 100, which gives you that. Again, it may be hard to find. It may be hard. You may say hip hop had a terrible year. Music is crap. I don't like any of this stuff. I turn on whatever you turn on. You don't turn on anything. First of all, y'all don't even really turn on anything. What do you turn on? What are you turning on? You turn on Breakfast Club. You're not really turning on Breakfast Club. You go into work. You're not really listening. You probably got a CD in your car. But okay, you don't like what your kids are listening to. You don't vibe with it. Well, here's 160 songs that came out this year that you might vibe with. So come on, put a little effort into it. The key, I said in this newsletter, the key to all of this is to find you some trusted sources who spend their time making it easier for you to not lose hope in the genre. Whether we're talking about the boom bap curatorial brilliance of my man DJ Absurd. DJ Absurd has put out a weekly mix over 2 hours long for like 900,228 weeks. DJ Absurd out of New Jersey. And it is, if you're a boom bap New York old school hip hop guy that literally can't stand anything on the radio, he's giving you a mix every week of artists making music now that would appeal to your boom bap tendencies. So you can't tell me that 2024 was a bust musically if you haven't listened to Wally Hart's lists, DJ Hoodwink's playlist, DJ Absurd's mixes. You can't tell me that. Go listen to that. And now we're talking about like 12 hours of music. So maybe by next time we come back here Monday night, you could tell me I listened to Hoodwink's thing and I listened to DJ Absurd's and I checked every album that Wally, put down on his list and it's all garbage. Then I'll believe you. Then you could talk. Then until then, let's be honest, your opinion is skewed. Lastly, I said, not only that, my man K Swift. K Swift is another one. Look, I linked to his, he does about once a month, and he puts out again, the same thing. Shouts to Cavalier. Cavalier put out a great album this year. Cavalier, I'm from New York. I used to run through the New York independent hip hop scene. I used to run Birthplace magazine. I was heavy into that stuff. I talked about all these cats. When mainstream hip hop was ignoring them, when mainstream hip hop was ignoring New York, and I wrote up Cav a bunch. I've seen Cav perform. It's great to see him getting some props, man. Come on, Elucid put out an album this year. Come on now. JPEG Mafia, Ka. Like, once again, rest in peace to Ka. Some great picks here. And he mentioned some others also. I gotta find it. But anyway, K Swift, he puts out a newsletter. He puts out a Medium post every month or so. So I link to him. You can go to the Hip Hop Heads subreddit. Y'all be on Reddit? By the way, if you go to the Hip Hop Culture subreddit, that's us. That's me. Hip Hop Culture subreddit. Find a lot of these stories there. The Hip Hop Heads subreddit. Like, go on Reddit and go to Hip Hop Heads. They talk about all kind of music there. And a lot of them are like, they like the nerdy stuff. They like the, backpack, whatever y'all might call it. But like a lot of the stuff is not necessarily the mainstream, front facing music. You can definitely find some gems in there. If you're on Reddit, you go to the hip hop subreddit. Even if you go to some sources like OK Player, they just put out their 50 best albums of 2024. I'm not going to put in my email to read them, but like, it was curated by folks like Tim Hotep, who's an OG, hip hop journalist. So I trust these sources to give me a little bit of Rob Markman, who's a good journalist as well. I think he's putting out something, or maybe he just did it on Instagram. There are sources you could follow that give you the music you want. And lastly, as I've always said, you can use the algorithms to your advantage. What? Yeah, here, I talked about this a while ago. Whatever you want from hip hop, you could find. 100,000%. It's almost annoying how many times we have to say it. Take the time to find some of the hip hop you like. It's real simple. Maybe you have Spotify and you like artist X. And you can go to Spotify and say, show me artist X, and go to song radio, artist radio. And it'll show you just algorithmically, magically, other songs by artists that are like artist X. And some of those artists you might know, and some you might not. And now you've discovered. Yay. Whatever you want from hip hop, you could find. That's it. Like, go to Spotify or Apple Music, Andrew, and just be like, oh, I like Doechii. She's new. I like her. Boom. And you go like, show me artist radio. It'll show you other artists like that artist. If you like Master Ace, go to Master Ace and say, I like this, go to artist radio. And it'll magically give you a bunch of songs from artists that, algorithmically, sure, like the algorithm's not our enemy. AI isn't our enemy. It's how you use the tool. And if you're not using the tool, and if you're not subscribing to my newsletter, and if you're listening to me and you're not telling people whenever you see it on Facebook, be like, this is hip hop sucks. Just point them here. That's your job. Bring them into the fold and we'll help change their minds, because that's what helps support our artists and the culture. I like Tidal too. I'm a shout out Tidal because as a DJ, Serato ties into Tidal, and I was like, I got to do like the DJ thing for the holidays. And I was like, yo, I know I'm gonna have a lot of my, Latino folk. And, I don't like of the MP3 of the music that I own. I just don't have a lot. You know what I mean? I have the bangers, but I don't got like a lot of cumbias. I don't got a lot of you know what I mean? So I'm like, going to find those and download. It's going to be kind of tough. But Tidal ties in. I'm like, bloop, bloop, bloop. Give me a playlist. Tidal, cumbias, da-da-da. Ooh, have my little partner be like, oh, this one's good. This one's, yeah. Okay, cool. Now, all of a sudden, all that stuff is accessible in my Serato DJ playlist. I'm like, that's some technology. I love that. Let's go. I love it. That was great. So, yeah, shouts to Tidal just for that service alone, worth $20 a month. So, yeah, I mean, that's it. That's what we've been talking about here. You can use the algorithms to your advantage and stop being afraid to like do what you used to do when you really cared about the music. Because as we always talk about here, especially from New York, from the early days of hip hop, you could only find hip hop on the radio in the 80s from 10 p.m. to 2 p.m. Friday and Saturday night on BLS, Mr. Magic and Marley Marl or on Kiss FM, the coolest legend, DJ Red Alert, got me into all of this. And you had to be up at 10 o'clock at night. You had to have your cassette tape. You had to press record and record what was on the radio and pause it during the commercials for VIM and and PC Richards and the Sun. Shouts to my OG New York heads. You know what I'm talking about. Because and nobody beats the Wiz. Come on now. Because you couldn't hear it during the week unless you were like maybe a college radio station. You had like a local, antenna. You can get a signal. I was on Long Island. We had Hofstra. We had Adelphi where Chuck D and them started out, and we had some college radio stations, but most times you couldn't get that during the week. We would sit and now look, we old, we got jobs, we got kids, we got life be life, and how we have time to do all this stuff. I get it. So what I did for y'all, because you have a lot to do, was I gave you at least 5 or 6. If you talk about Wally Hart, you talk about DJ Hoodwink, you talk about DJ Absurd, you talk about even the OK Player, list, whatever. You're gonna see a bunch of those year-end things, but I didn't want to focus on all those. I want to focus on our vibe here. So I've given you some spots you can go to and check in regularly to see what's new with those folks. And then, maybe that inspires folks to go and, do a little bit more. So I want to thank y'all for tuning in tonight. So again, was hip hop good this year? Absolutely. Musically, 1,000%. And again, we can talk about the state of the music business, but even by most standards, that seems to have improved as well. And we could talk about like someone like a Doechii, right? We could talk about there's a little buzz behind like Tyler, the Creator's joint. We could talk about some of the, breakout stuff that happened. We could talk about Drake and Kendrick's battle and saying, that ignited something in hip hop. And it wasn't just, whatever folks like to say about hip hop that is negative, that they don't like. There's something to be said for a good battle. And what Kendrick did lyrically and artistically and stylistically, and in fact, taking down the commercial juggernaut that is Drake, taking him down at least a few notches. And then having like the most talked about artist at the end of 24 be someone like Doechii. Not only, if y'all wanna, if you must, she's a female woman MC, whatever term you want, it should be woman. But but I'm imitating people because that's what I hear. But she's a woman. She's a woman MC. Now, I don't like to make the distinctions, but y'all always talk about like women MCs don't have it anymore. We've talked about this 1,000 times. But first of all, I want spectrum. I want a wide range, because I was listening to Lauryn Hill, but I was listening to Lil' Kim. You know what I mean? And while you were complaining about, these women are over-sexualized, but also put it in your mouth. Like, come on, stop. So I want a spectrum, right? I want women to be doing a P-rap and doing it well. If that's what they want to do and that's what they want to hear, and women are effing with that and they rocking with that, then I'm happy if they happy. Let's go. But don't act like Doechii don't exist. Don't act like Rhapsody don't exist, like Cyrock don't exist, like Lil Sims don't exist, like my homegirl, Genesis B don't exist, and Liquid don't exist, and all these, people don't really hear about that much. Like don't act like they don't exist. Shay Noir, I think Andrew Wang said earlier. No Name, like there's plenty of women MCs that are doing dope work. Stop! Enough of it. In 2025, no more talking ish about the quality of hip hop music. How about that? And I just spent an hour and something telling you why there are still people saying that about this year and have lost their mind. Mumu Fresh shouts, indeed. There's so many. And again, you know what? Don't know who they are? Cool. Google it. Go to Spotify and say, artists like Cyrock, and now you see a bunch. And how fine is Cyrock? I'm just saying. I didn't say that out loud. I don't know why I said that. I'm just saying. I'm just, I'm, we, I, but come on, like there's so many things. Whatever you want, you can find. And this year, more than ever. Great year. Santa Claus says, and this was a great year for hip hop music. Now, there are some stumbles along the way. Sure. There was some, I mean, shoot, you could be the biggest Eminem fan. Eminem dropped an album, for God's sakes. OGs like Snoop and Common and LL and Master Ace, like, they dropped albums, right? New Jack, and I tell you, and I'm gonna end with this, but I remind y'all, a lot of new artists are dope too. Y'all just don't give them, y'all sleep on them. I have Vivo, I have a TV down here. I talked about this before. I got a little, it's a like a man cave. And then someone was like, oh, you should call it a manny cave. And I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? Of course, it's a manny cave. But I also like to call it the Mando. It's like the Mando, but Manny, so it's a Mando. Anyway, whatever. And I got TV here, and I don't watch it that often, but sometimes I do. And I have it set purposely to turn on Vivo hip hop when it comes on. So the first thing that comes on is just whatever's on Vivo hip hop. And a lot of it is that new stuff that, I'm an older dude, come from a certain era, come from a certain place in the country. And, a lot of that is meh. But some of it isn't. And some of it, even if I don't I don't mess with it like lyrically, I mess with it sonically. And even if I don't mess with it sonically, I might mess with it lyrically, or I might mess with it cinematographically. Some of the video work these young folks are doing is really like leaps and bounds over what we used to watch coming up and, watching videos. And undoubtedly, and I'll give you this, and I'll challenge you to do this too, if you're looking for music and wondering whether, this is a good year or not, which again, if we haven't convinced you by now, like just turn on Vivo hip hop and like sit for 5 songs. 5. Just 5. And tell me if you get 2. New artist, someone you probably never heard of. And see if, maybe you hear something that, okay, that's interesting. That's how I really started listening to JID. I think it's pretty talented. Saw an album. That's how I knew Ab Soul came out with a new project. It was on Vivo. Wasn't on radio. Didn't come across my FYP page. Wasn't on my YouTube, whatever. It was on Vivo Hip Hop, right next to Boss Man D-Lo. You know what I mean? Like it's like right after like Glorilla or something. It's like, what? Like why would these two things be back to back? But they were, and they are, and it's okay. It's okay. Some of that stuff is pretty good, and it's okay to spend a little time with it. All right, folks. So I think it was a good job this year. Just again, thank you all for being in here, for rocking with us. Yeah, Muddy Waters 2, Red Man's about to drop. That's dope. Yeah, I saw Hip Hop TV, Andrew. I don't know if it's run by Ralph McDaniels. I think he's affiliated with it. It hasn't shown me anything yet, but I'm watching it. It shows that there's many rap genres as there are movie genres. Yeah, I use the movie analogy all the time, Prism. I say, just because, like, you may not, what's my man's name? Great filmmaker, Mtume Gant. I used to watch him, and he would like have this real critique about, cinema and filmmaking, and, and a lot of people feel this way, like, the films, the blockbuster films, the Avengers, and like all this stuff. It's not great, like filmmaking, like from an artistic standpoint. And I get it. And you might be in the filmmaking business and say, listen, I'm trying to tell real stories. We're out here trying to make these, art house films. We're trying to make these stories, and then there's still documentaries. Like documentaries exist. There are actually films too. But, and so when you look at the movies and you say like, all I see is, these big, like Smile 2. And you're like, oh my God, please, can you give me a movie that's not, first of all, a 2 or a 3 or a 4, an original idea, whatever. But those movies still exist. You could subscribe to the Sundance channel on your cable, whatever. You can subscribe to, or you could like any of the streaming channels have those movies, and you could play and talk about and big them up. You can go to small theaters in your neighborhood and still get the cinematic experience. Documentaries, as though I love documentaries, and part of what made hip hop so good in 2024 was some really good documentaries we're going to talk about next week. Like, that's part of it. It's not just, oh, the music sucked, so hip hop sucked. And first of all, the music didn't suck, so none of it sucked. So it's subjective. So I hate to say, I would never in my life try to say that my opinion, who am I? I'm just a guy. Come on. I'm just a guy. I'm just a hip hop dude. I'm not even, come on. I'm just, how what nerve do I have telling anybody how they should feel about hip hop music and culture? Fair. But I will say, because it's all subjective, and I get that. But I will say that if you haven't done the things or the kind of things that we've gone over tonight, if you haven't noticed any of these things, even talked about these things, then your opinion is just ill-informed. Is that generous? Is that diplomatic enough? I could say just like, shut up, you don't need to be saying nothing, but I'll be generous and I'll say, look, it's just ill-informed. You have been misled. You have been led astray. You have been bamboozled and run amok into thinking that 2024 wasn't a great year for hip hop. Part of it is musical. We went over that tonight. Part of it is cultural. We're going to talk about that next week, including things like documentaries, including the international scene, including hip hop and education. I just went to the Howard Hip Hop Studies Conference, ran into some beautiful, beautiful people like Miss Parker. Shouts to Timothy Jones. Shouts to Messiah Clark. Shouts to Dr. Caruth. Shouts to, all the good. Andrew Wang was there. Like, shouts to the beautiful, burgeoning, blossoming, brilliant and beautiful hip hop education movement. More and more important as they try to take a lot of things out of the education system that hip hop was putting back in. And I don't mean what you think, if maybe not y'all, but like people who might be tuned in, like, what are you talking about? How could hip hop be great? Hip hop's so great when you bring it into the classroom and use it as a tool for uplifting minds and self-esteem and information transfer and conflict redirection and all the things we talk about. But now they started to figure that out, and they're going to find ways to do the opposite. So it is even more important for our hip-hop education folk and the people who are in that field, or people who are parents and want to see this, want to see good things happen, to pay attention to what we're talking about here. So with that said, I thank you all for doing that and for rocking with me, for rocking with this show, you've been hoodwinked, for watching this, this stream. Has hip hop been good this year? I think the consensus is that it has. And it's a lot easier to complain about what you don't like in this room, which we talk about what we do like, and then people watch this and hopefully they get inspired and say, hey, wait a minute, maybe I have been a little bit hoodwinked and led astray. And so when you need a place to help you figure that out, I have 3 options for you. Number 1, this right here, the live stream every Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. You can check us out. I've been on a roll 3 straight weeks. I'm doing good, y'all. This is hard for me to do. The one thing you can do to help me out is become a member. Thanks to, again, some of the folks that have been in the room tonight, Andrew Wang, Dr. Raphael Travis, some other folks I think stopped in earlier, who have been supporting this. It's not a lot. It's 2 fancy coffees a month, basically $10 a month. Patreon.com/MannyFaces. Please consider it, even though you're tapped out probably from the, submitting to the capitalistic demands of this holiday season. I know I am, because I got a 9-year-old and she's a little spoiled, but she's the greatest. She's baby girl faces. She's the greatest. However, your money does not go into refilling my gas tank or my bank account. It goes into ensuring that this show keeps going, paying the subscription fees for the interviews. We'll be having interviews again beginning of the year. I got a few that I'm sending out invites to. Some really cool stuff. Recommend a guest. You can always reach out to me. Do all the things. But one thing you can do, like I said, patreon.com/mannyfaces. Very, very helpful. Very, 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 very helpful. Also, the newsletter, it's free. mannyfaces.substack.com. In the new year, we're going to have a new place for that. I got something that I'm working on that is going to be really interesting. I'll talk to you about that. We have a new community space to gather, which I'm going to announce, I guess, maybe on the next show or maybe on the first show of 2025. I'm still working out the kinks in the background. So yeah, we're doing some things. Please subscribe to the newsletter, mannyfaces.substack.com. Please come back every Monday here, 9 p.m. Eastern with me, your man, Manny Faces. And then, of course, the audio podcast. Some of y'all only listen to the audio feeds or, maybe you can't make it to the live stream. You can always watch this on the replay. I hope that y'all do. But also the podcast. We do have an audio version, which is cool if you like, listening to audio podcasts when you're doing whatever you do. Check that out as well. Hip Hop Can Save America. And in 2025, we'll talk about it next week. Part two of Has Hip Hop Been Good This Year? We'll talk about the culture. We'll talk about the international stage. We'll talk about some of the other elements. We'll talk about hip hop and education and in intersectionality and interdisciplinary actions. And then next year, we'll also have the book. Hip Hop Can Save America, the book is coming. It's coming, y'all. I'll give you more details when I get final word on things. And then a community gathering space online, a place for us to gather and have conversations during the week. Not just have to wait to see my face Monday nights. So happy holidays. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. If you celebrate Hanukkah, Happy Hanukkah. If you celebrate all the other things or no things at all, just the spirit of this season, even though it's capitalistically draped, is actually about, family, giving thanks, looking back on the year and looking forward to the next. And through all of those things, it is the folks that are watching me right now that, y'all send me, and I appreciate y'all. I'm just doing what I do, and I just do it. And I don't know if it's helping or, making the biggest impact, but little by little, I think we're getting there, and it's because of y'all. So thank y'all. Happy holidays. Be back next Monday. And hit me during the week. You know where to find me. It is your man,
Manny Faces.
You sick for this one. Sick for this one. Sick for this one.
Merry
Happy
Christmas.
holidays.
Oh, I merged them. Sorry.
Happy holidays.
Thank y'all. Peace and love. I'll be back. Maybe I'll keep this on. This is pretty nice. You like my Santa? Look, check it out. DJ Santa. Ow, DJ Santa on the ones and two. Ow. Yeah, Christmas and holidays and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Shouts to DMX. Rest in peace. All right, I'll see y'all next week. Peace and love. Thanks for rocking with me. We out.